सदस्य लोग और जितने भी हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, सबका मैं स्वागत करता हूँ, अभिनंदन करता हूँ। विशेष रूप से जिनका व्याख्यान हमने 2 सितंबर 2020 को ये शतावधानी गणेश व्याख्यान माला के अंतर्गत जिनका स्वयं हमने व्याख्यान का श्रवण किया और बहुत सारा ज्ञान हमने उनसे प्राप्त किया है। शीला जी और हम सभी लोग आजकल राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति के अंतर्गत सुन भी रहे हैं और बोल भी रहे हैं। उसमें जिस प्रकार के मल्टीपल डिसिप्लिन्स की बात की जा रही, मल्टी डिसिप्लिन एजुकेशन की बात की जा रही, रिसर्च की बात की जा रही, वो सारा का सारा जो मल्टीप्लिसिटी ऑफ एजुकेशन है, बल्कि एक से बहुत सारी जो शाखाएं निकल रही हैं, उसके बारे में आदरणीय शतावधानी गणेश जी ने हमको ज्ञान दिया। हमने सुना कि किस प्रकार से उन्होंने बात रखी कि वी नो दैट वी आर बिकमिंग वन एंड विदाउट वर्ड। संसार में रहते हुए भी संसार से अलग रहना। एवरी नॉलेज इज फॉर लिबरेशन। काम शास्त्र से लेकर जितने भी शास्त्र विधाएं हैं सब मोक्ष को प्रदान करने वाली हैं। किस प्रकार से उन्होंने ज्ञान की शाखाओं के 4 भाग बताए, अधिकारी, विषय, संबंध और प्रयोजन। इनमें ही सारी व्यवस्थाएं जो होती हैं ज्ञान की होती हैं, उपनिषदीय परंपरा को से जोड़ने की कोशिश की। उन्होंने वेद, उपनिषद, महाभारत, रामायण, मनु, याज्ञवल्क्य, कालिदास, पाणिनि, विवेकानंद, तुलसीदास इत्यादि सभी के संदर्भों को उद्धृत किया। ये मुझे याद है। इसके अलावा भी बहुत सारे उन्होंने बातें की थी। उन्होंने ग्रामर, लिटरेचर, नॉलेज की सारे जितने भी विषय हो सकते हैं उन्होंने बताया कि हमारी जो ज्ञान परंपरा जो है वो अभिधा और लक्षणा से हटकर के व्यंजना जिसको परोक्षतम स्वरूप बताते हैं, उससे किस प्रकार से हमको अपील करती है। हम व्यंजना में ही बात करते हैं, इसमें एक के कई अर्थ निकलते रहते हैं और व्यक्ति अपनी आत्मा के स्तर के अनुसार उनका निर्वचन करता रहता है। आपने संगीता, ब्राह्मण, आरण्यक, उपनिषदों का भी उल्लेख किया, उनके अंतर संबंधों की व्याख्या की। आपने बताया किस प्रकार से हम 6 विधाओं में सारे ज्ञान को बांटते हैं, विशेषकर वेद वेदांगों को। इसमें शिक्षा, व्याकरण, निरुक्त, छंद, ज्योतिष और कल्प, और सबके बारे में आपने विशद व्याख्या के साथ में एक संक्षेप में ही सारी चीजें हमारे सामने प्रस्तुत की। हम लोग बहुत लाभान्वित हुए हैं। हम आपके अनुग्रहित, हम आपके कृतार्थ हैं माननीय गणेश जी। आप जैसा विद्वान जो है वो हमारे बीच में उपस्थित हुआ है। आज भी हमारा जो समाज विज्ञान का एक होलिस्टिक स्वरूप है उसको लेकर के आप हमको बताने वाले हैं। मैं चाहूँगा हमारे साथ जो जुड़े हैं हमारे प्रतिभागी बंधु, हमारे सहयोगी लोग जो हैं, वो बड़े ध्यान से सुने। अवधारणाओं की व्याख्याओं को कैसे जोड़ेंगे, परिभाषाओं को किस प्रकार जोड़ेंगे, कंटेंट्स को किस प्रकार जोड़ेंगे, मेथोडोलॉजी से किस प्रकार से जोड़ेंगे, इंटरप्रिटेशन किस प्रकार जोड़ेंगे, अपने अपने विषयों को लेकर के हम लोग आदरणीय गणेश जी के व्याख्यान सुनेंगे। गणेश जी एक प्रचंड विद्वान, अद्भुत विद्वान व्यक्ति हैं। 18 भाषाओं के ज्ञाता हैं। जो नए प्रतिभागी जुड़े हैं उनके बताना चाहूँगा 10,000 से अधिक घंटे से अधिक उन्होंने व्याख्यान दे चुके हैं। शतावधान और अष्टावधान में उनकी विशेषज्ञता है। कई भाषाओं में कविताएं लिखते हैं। 58 ग्रंथों का उन्होंने लेखन किया है। उसमें काव्य भी है, मीमांसा भी है, आलोचना भी है, गद्य भी है, पद्य भी है, सभी उसके अंदर समाविष्ट हो जाते हैं। ऐसे महान व्यक्ति को पाने में आदरणीय श्री कृष्ण भट्ट जी ने हम लोगों का मार्गदर्शन किया है। उनके माध्यम से ही ये सहयोग प्राप्त हुआ है। मैं आदरणीय गणेश जी का, आप सभी का, हमारी बहन शीला जी का और पीएल चतुर्वेदी साहब अभी हम लोग साथ जुड़े हुए हैं, उन सबको मैं सम्मान पूर्वक उनका अभिनंदन करता हूँ, वादन करता हूँ। आदरणीय अमरजी लोचन
जी नमस्कार। आज इस उद्बोधन के बाद मैं रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ आदरणीय गणेश जी से अपने संबोधन को प्रस्तुत करें। जब बीच में अध्यक्ष जी त्रिपाठी जी आएंगे तो फिर मैं उनका स्वागत करूंगा। जी गणेश जी, फ्लोर इज योर्स।
ओम तत्सत्। योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्नाम् अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्। Good evening. Salutations to all. I am extremely beholden to Professor Bajpayee for his kind and a very succinct introduction, which summarized what all I had shared earlier, and it will give way for today's deliberations. I am also extremely beholden to all other scholars, professors, and even students and researchers, along with, of course, the real motivator, my fatherly figure, Professor Krishna Bhaji. Last time, I told about the Anubandha Chatushtaya, Adhikari, Vishaya, Sambandha, and Prayojan, and also 18 Vidyasthana, which were recognized in our tradition. And this way of holistic approach is very, very important. And briefly, I gave how we have to approach the 4 Vedas and the 6 Vedangas and the remaining 8 aspects that we have to study, where 4 are the Upavedas and the other 4 are Itihasa, Purana, and then Agama, and then Darshana. These are the other 4. Though here and there we have some variations regarding the details of the 18 Vidyas, we don't have disagreement in the spirit and in the totalistic approach. Now coming to the Upaveda. The Upaveda means it is a subordinate Veda, but it is as important as the Veda. Subordination is only with respect to its reverence towards Veda and not with respect to its importance. Because in our tradition, many times we miss, if something is subordinate means we think that it is inferior, but it is wrong. It is a way of showing respect. If we are touching the feet of elderly people, it's not that we are inferior. It's only to suggest that they are elderly and respectable. The respect would never demean us. Rather, it will uplift us. That is how we believe in giving respect and showing respect to elders. Many times, especially in the modern parlance, it is mistaken that if you touch the feet of the people who have to be revered, people who have to be respected, we think that we are denigrated. No, no, it is not. We are elevated. It is the kritarthata, it is the fulfillment, and it is the self-esteem that has been reflected there by submitting ourselves to the elderly people, who are elderly by so many virtues, by so many aspects. That is how the Upavedas, Upa means not just sub or subordinate. Upa word also means closer proximity, as we saw earlier last time, how Upanishad, the Upa in the Upanishad, the Upasarga, the prefix in the Upanishad is not about the subordination of it to sitting. Nishad means sitting. Means it is not subordinated to the act of sitting. It is closer proximity, coming closer. Means Upavedas of these 4 Vedas means they make us more closer to the 4 Vedas. That's how we have to look into these features. Why I am emphasizing these things? If we don't understand the real meaning in the nature of what they were to be understood, how they were understood in our tradition, we'll be going away from the spirit. Because the word, the upasarga, the suffix, prefix upa has so many meanings that cannot be brought out in one word, sub-Vedas. Immediately, sub-registrar, sub-inspector means he is subordinate to inspector, he is subordinate to registrar, like that we think. But it is not so. Now coming to the Upavedas, the Rigveda's Upaveda is Ayurveda. And Yajurveda's Upaveda is Arthaveda. And Samaveda's Upaveda is Gandharva Veda. And Atharvaveda's Upaveda is Tapasya Veda. Though we have some variations here, the Yajurveda's Upaveda is called Dhanurveda and not Arthaveda. And sometimes Arthaveda is taken as a Upaveda of Samaveda, but it will not matter. This is the better version which I am giving. Ayurveda, of course, it includes all that is connected with health, hygiene, and total way of living. It means it includes botany, zoology, chemistry, inorganic chemistry, pharmacology, pharmacopoeia, and so many other things are included under the one heading Ayurveda. As per the text of Vagbhata, Ashtanga Sangraha, and also another abridged version, Ashtanga Hridaya, of the same author, we have Shalya Tantra, Shalakya Tantra, Vajikarana, Kaumara Bhatya, like that. They have so many details. I'm not going to those details. They are holistic in nature. That is what we have to see and understand. And then the Upaveda of Yajurveda, which is very important from our perspective, Arthaveda. Arthaveda, Arthashastra should not be translated as economics. It's not wrong, but it is limited. Kautilya, in the very beginning of Arthashastra, gives the meaning of his Shastra. So it is a very, very elaborate thing. He is dealing with administration, he is dealing with resources, natural resources and human resources. He is dealing with economics, he is dealing with sociology and all other sciences. So totally, Arthaveda, Artha means, it also means purpose. Purushartha means it is the means of understanding one's own self. We discussed that earlier. Likewise, Artha is a means. Sadhana. Sadhana is a channel. Sadhana is an instrument to move towards Siddhi. That is how Artha means. It is sadhana. It is equipment. It is instrument. So many things which come under the purview of Artha. And then the other Veda, Upaveda, is Gandharva Veda. Gandharva Veda is connected with fine arts. Gandharvas, they dictate this Veda. What is the nature of Gandharva? Gandharvas are emotional beings. So that which caters to emotions and that which sublimates emotions, that is Gandharva Veda. In Gandharva Veda, we have Gita, Nritta, Vaditra, Kavya, Chitra, Shilpa. These 6 basic arts, fundamental arts. Gita is pure music. Vaditra is instrumental music. Nritta is pure dance. And that when applied with lyrics and music, it will become Nritya. And then the extension of that in theatrical form will become Natya. Nritu Anukarane. From that we have the word Nritya. Nat, from the root nat we have Natya. Nata means actor oriented. Nritya means dancer oriented. We use all these words in a similar fashion as though they are synonyms, but there are a lot of shades of differences. In Nritya, interpretation becomes more important. In Natya, enactment is more important. In Natya, imitation takes the whole thing, imitation roots, while in Nritya, it is conveying interpretation. And that's why in Natya, it may not be desirable to elaborate one emotion in a detailed manner. But in Nritya, that delineation of emotion can go on longer and longer. Well, and then we have Kavya. In West, Kavya will be translated as poetry. It is not right. It is literature. We take that both prose and verse, Gadya and Padya, both are Kavya. Unfortunately, in the West, they had to realize that after so many centuries, only in the last century, in the early part of 20th century, they realized that even prose can be poetry. Before that, they could not. But in our tradition, since long, we have Gadyam, Padyam, Tatha, Mishram, Trayam, Kavyam, Itiritu. It means our approach, even in literature, is holistic. Padya is restricted by meter, but meter is a desirable quality to poetry and not the discrete quality. It is not an inevitable virtue. It is not the conclusive virtue. That's how we have Kavya. Kave Karma Kavyam. It is not come from the word poem becoming poetry. It is Kavi becoming Kavya. Kavi can write in prose or verse or song. Even a playwright is poet, even a novelist is poet, even a lyricist is poet, even an epic writer is poet. Like that, we have a broader frame for that. How we have Arthashastra, Arthika, Arthashastrajna has a bigger frame, so is that. And even in our tradition, the word Sangeeta, it is not just restricted to music, as it is known in Amarakosha of Amarsimha, or even in Sangeeta Ratnakara, the magnum opus produced by Sharangadeva of Devagiri. He says, Geetam Nrittam Tatha Vadyam Trayam Sangeetam Uchyate. Tauryatrikam Nritya Geetam Vadyam Natya Vidam Trayam. That is what Amarakoshakara says. It means Sangeeta includes both song, instrumentation, and dance. So, if Sangeet Natak Academy, their dance is not represented only theatre like that, people cannot quarrel. In Sangeeta, we have both instrumental music and vocal music along with dance like that. So, a bigger perspective is seen. Then we have Chitra Shilpa. And then Chitra and Shilpa. Their Shilpa has subdivisions, Murti Shilpa, Vastu Shilpa like that. But Shilpa, the word comes from Shil, Shil Samadhu from the root. We have Shilpa. It means any construction, any production will become Shilpa. Even dance at times is called Shilpa. And even sciences are also called as Shilpa. Vijnanam, Shilpa Shastrayoho. So says Amarakosha. Like that, to understand our text, we have to know such basic technical terms in their proper connotations. That is Gandharva Veda. And then we have, in the Gandharva Veda, Rasa is the foremost thing. All arts, they have to focus at one point, Rasa. If Rasa, the aesthetic enjoyment is not God, there is no purpose of art. Generally, in the West, recent times, of late, since a century or so, more than a century, we have one notion that art should make people think. But to make people think, we have Shastra, science. The purpose of art, prime purpose of art is not to make people think. In the words of Bharata, Trailokyasya Vishranti Jananam Natyametat Bhavishyat. Chitta Vishranti, giving rest to mind. In Vichar, while making people to think, mind will become unrest. Thoughts, naturally, they generate restlessness in mind, for good or bad. But we have to quench, we have to make our thoughts sleep and enjoy, observe our emotions. Then what is the purpose of art? Vishramsti Jananam, to rest. Because in Shastra, we have a sort of intellectual stimulus and then intellectual approach is there. In the world, we have both emotional and intellectual involvement and hence agitation. But in art, we neither have intellectual involvement, nor we have emotional involvement, but we have emotional rest. Means our emotions are sympathetically observed and enjoyed. It means we get an opportunity to introspect our emotions without intellectualizing. This is very important. And hence, our society, how come our society was so peaceful and pious? Because it was constantly seasoned by art. Unlike other religions, where art was not an inseparable part and parcel of every ritual, every act, in our Sanatana Dharma, every aspect of ritual and every aspect of life is interwoven with art. And hence, natural catharsis used to happen. Naturally, emotional cleansing used to happen. Naturally, one used to visualize one's emotions and get corrected. For example, if we take works like Ramayana and Mahabharata, should we call them religious works or poetic creations? We have no confusion. But a modern mind will have confusion. In the West, it should belong to either religion or neither. It should belong to either religion or art. It should occupy only one position. Something like one person, one position in modern political parlance. That's what happened in the case of these works. But it is not so. In the Western literary tradition, nowhere they have taken Bible as a poem. Bible is gospel, word of the Lord, revelation, like that. But here we have Ramayana and Mahabharata. It is poem, Adi Kavya, Itihasa Kavya, and Vyasa is hailed as Kavi Brahma. It means just see, even in our rituals also, so much of art is being involved. We have music during birth. We have music even when the baby is put to cradle. We have so many lullabies, even in the Western world also they have. But they have part and parcel of ritual. For that matter, the whole of Samveda is music itself. In Vedic works, we have many references to people who are blessed by the deities just for the reason that they sung Saman so well. And then in marriage, we need not say. Here, I really admire our North Indian friends, our North Indian brothers and sisters, because they have still kept the spirit of music in marriage. But we South Indians, we have lost that spirit. Earlier, we too had only in pockets of some remote hamlets, some remote villages of Karnataka or other places, we still have certain music in marriage, but we are completely lost. And then even in death, we have so many songs. We have people who weep and sing Rudalis. Whether in North India or whether in Tamil Nadu, we do have such tradition. Even the deceased persons are lamented through song. And even while taking them in procession, we have music. We have musical instruments and ensemble. Like that, it goes on. Means art has become part and parcel of all our 16 samskara. Everywhere we do have. From cradle to coffin, as we say in English, we have everywhere. And then we have dance also. Why? Even our yajnas, they accommodated so much of music and dance. Even theatre. In certain yajnas, the Marjaliya Kanyas have to come dancing for the rhythm and music of Samveda while carrying water pitchers on their heads, and they used to perform that. And even the people, the Ritviks, the people who were in charge of the ritual, they were supposed to dance in specific ways. And even the Yajamana, who has to perform the yajna, who has to perform the Vedic ritual, Vedic sacrifice, he has to finally dance, enacting Swargarohana, as though he has achieved that heaven, so he has to dance. And so also, dance is accompanied with music. In yajnas, we have specific instruments to be used. That is Brahati Veena, Aghatali Veena, Apaghatali Veena, Karkari Veena, like that, so many stringed instruments. And then Bhumi Dundubi, a drum, Mridanga. Mridanga is South Indian percussive instrument used in classical music and similar to Pakawaj of North Indian music. And Mridanga, it's made of mud earlier. Now we use wood. It was earlier made of mud itself, and that is Bhumi Dundubi. And also flute, Vamshavadya, like that. And in the Yajurveda, we have so many instruments, so many artists being mentioned as part and parcel of the Vedic culture, sacrificial culture and ritualistic culture. And then we have so many other details regarding painting, sculpture and other things. Ours is both Saguna and Nirguna Upasana. In Saguna Upasana, we should have form. We should have so many such details. Constantly, our people were pacified When there were emotional turmoil, the emotional turmoil used to be pacified, and so our society had a natural calmness. A great Kannada poet of yesteryears by name P.T. Narasimhachari of the famed temple village Melkote, one among the four famous places of Sri Vishnava tradition, which was established by Bhagavan Ramanujacharya. P.T. Narasimhacharya used to be called as Putina, P.T. Narasimhacharya. He writes, this way of self-elevation used to happen in three ways in our ancient culture. One, ritual, that is kalpa, as we call kalpa, and other art, that is kala, and the third one, darshana or vedanta. I add fourth one, the society. Society used to season people, and it used to happen for one and all. And people who were involved in ritual, that used to be so. And people who are who were involved in art, that used to happen so. And people who were philosophical nature, who had a bent for philosophy, they had that. But all these were inseparable. Our society was interwoven with a ritual, art, and philosophy. And that's why you just take an example of a Vedic hymn, a very lofty philosophical detail there used to be wonderfully presented in ritual, and it used to be enacted as art. No distinction was made. But you see, from the Western world, after the fall of the Roman Empire, after Constantine, the king in the western capital of Roman people, that was in Constantinople, it was named after Constantine, that is the modern Istanbul, capital city of Turkey. After 3rd century, he got converted to Christianity and died. From then till Renaissance, more than 1,000 years, more than a millennium, art never flourished. Earlier, in the pagan culture, whether it is Roman or Greek or Egyptian or Assyrian or Babylonian or anywhere, we had art taking an important role in ritual. But from Christian beginning, from Semitic religion, art took a backseat. And even in Islam, instrumental music is completely barred, not to say about dance. Only vocal music is allowed there in ritual. And of course, we have so much of visual treat because of Saguna Aradhana. And because of that, social unrest used to be reduced to a great lot. Because, as the words of Bharata, they make it clear, Trilokisya Vishranti Janana Vishranti. And he again says, Dukkharthanam Sukham, who are disturbed mentally and who are emotionally disturbed to such an extent when they are in grief, art will have a great solace and that will impart sukha to them. In such a way, we have art taking a lot of vital role in seasoning our society and then re-establishing our values. But the very purpose of art is not to reform the society, but to form the society. As in the words of Hirina last time mentioned, education's purpose was not essentially to inform the minds, but to form the minds. Likewise, art used to do that. And then the other dimension is philosophy. Highest philosophy used to be depicted through art. In Ramayana, it is a wonderful poem. At the same time, it has a greater philosophy also. Sita is the Jivatma, and Rama is the Paramatma, and Ravana is the Avidya, 10-faced Avidya, 5 senses, that is Jnanendriyas, and 5 Karmendriyas, 5 senses for perception and 5 senses for activation. These put together 10. This Avidya always wants to conquer Jiva and throw it into the deeps of pain and agony. That is, isolation from Paramatma itself is the greatest pain that Jivatman can have. And that's what the abduction of Sita means. And when Sita was kept in Ashokavana, though the name is Ashoka, it is really Sashoka. It's full of Shoka. Because according to Vedanta, our wrong understanding only makes this world pathetic, makes the world sorrowful. If our understanding is corrected, then it will become Ashoka and not Sashoka. And then Hanuman comes as a messenger, as a guru, and then Jivatma is liberated. That is how we have the traditions of Adhyatma being explored in Ramayana, whether it is in Adhyatma Ramayana or Ananda Ramayana or Bhushundi Ramayana. Like that, there are so many Ramayana. They give such interpretation from time and again. This is how the philosophy. And in the Mahabharata also, we do see that the Kauravas and the Pandavas, they are representing Dharma and Adharma. Duryodhano Manyumayo Mahadrumaha, Yudhishthiro Dharmamayo Mahadrumaha. Like that, the very opening of Mahabharata gives the imagery of two trees. One is the embodiment of Adharma, while the other is the embodiment of Dharma. For one, the ignorant, blind king who was blind both by head and heart, physically, mentally, and spiritually was blind, Dhritarashtra. The name is also very suggestive. He who holds the reins of the kingdom, Rajya Sutra ka Dharak, Dhritarashtra. Dhritam Rashtram Yena, Saha Dhritarashtra. He who holds the power is blind, both internally and externally. And he is the root cause for this dharma. Well, here it is Krishna, Bhagavan, Moolam Krishna. That is how we have such a distinction. And in that sense, art is not against philosophy, not even against averse to, not even averse to philosophy. And so also the ritual. In every ritual, we see that spirit. It is not a mechanical thing. It is not mundane. It is not pomp and luxury. Like that, these features, they took care of our society, and that's why so many things which are needed from the modern perspective for social refinement, reformance, and whatever, reformation and whatever, they were not needed for this purpose, for this reason. Then we have the other Veda, Sthapatya Veda. Sthapati means an engineer who erects the constructions, who builds them, who designs, develops, and that person's Veda is Sthapatya. Sthapatehe idam Sthapatyam. So there we have physics and other aspects of engineering, including mathematics, they come to picture. That's so we have the four Vedas, 8, and 6 Vedangas, they become totally 14. And the other 4, Itihasa. Itihasa means Itihasa. Was it not so? Was it not so happened? It so happened, is it not? That is the meaning Itihasa. Because however perfect our historical writing, however perfect we may write history, still we have to depend on a lot of guesswork. It is not 100% our direct perception, because basing on records, basing on evidences, basing on our calculations, basing on extending our imagination, and basing on our inferences, we write history. That's why here and there we have to make corrections in history. Then and there, as newer evidences are found, newer evidences come up, break up, then we have to correct history. The same classic example of Aryan invasion theory, how wrong it is, No people, no wise men of that time were unable to understand. The Harappan, Mohenjo-daro and such Sindhu Sabhyata as we call, the Sindhu culture had artifacts, and Vedic culture has literary sources. How come? What a peculiar thing. The Vedic people have left no material evidence, while the Harappan people have left no literary evidence. Can there be anything like that? This is Andhapangu Nyaya. A person is blind and a person is lame, but somehow they have moved so far without getting affected, without getting hurt anywhere. Can it happen so? They would have joined together. The blind man would have lifted the lame on his shoulders and he would have carried. The lame would have shown the direction and blind would have moved, and so both would have reached their respective destinations. Means the Vedic literary evidence has to go with the Harappan artifacts. That is what which is being done in these 30-40 years. And thank God, we are getting very good results. And now we are so confident to say that there is nothing like Aryan invasion. Everything is Aryan nativity, and there is no separation between so-called Dravidian culture and so-called Aryan culture. It is one Sanatana Dharma culture. This is how you have to make this collaboration. And Itihasa is that. In Ramayana and Mahabharata, we do see a lot of history. We do see a lot of ritual. We do see a lot of philosophy. And beyond all that, it is great poetry. Everything can stay together without any disturbance, without any confusion. And this cannot be understood by a person who is outside this frame of culture and who is not ready to go by objective logic. In Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are called Itihasa. And of course, we have the other one, Purana, next one. In Purana also, we have a lot of history. I shall come to Purana later. But Itihasa, because these two poets, Vyasa and Valmiki, wrote their epics when their heroes were still living, when they were still moving, and they were direct witness to that. This is very important. They wrote not based on memory, not based on hearsay, not based on third-person evidence. They wrote based on their direct observation and experience, personal experience. For that, it becomes Itihasa. Though a lot of poetry is there, it is based on factuality. For example, a work like Kalhana's Rajatarangini hails from Kashmir, and it gives a lot of details about Kashmirian kings and their acts. So much of details are given, but that is considered as poem. Though it is Itihasa, it is Itihasa Kavya. For example, a work like Mathura Vijayam of the famous poetess Ganga Devi, Mahakavitri from Vijayanagar period, 14th century, was daughter-in-law of Bukkaraya. She wrote Veera Kampanaraya Charitam or Mathura Vijayam. Basing on the adventure of her own husband, Kampanaraya, she was eyewitness to everything. And Harsha Charita wrote by Bana in 7th century Common Era. He wrote what he saw and what he heard from people of confidence, people whom he can relate. And then there are many such things. Vikramanka Devi Charitam of another Kashmir poet who wrote an epic on a great king of Karnataka, 6th Vikramaditya, the 6th, like that, the scores of Itihasa Kavya, though have rich poetic beauty, they are also histories. And then we have the next one, that is the 16th one, is Purana. Puranavamiti Puranam, that is one of the etymologies of this name. Purana means it is age-old new. It is oldest new, novelty. A very paradoxical statement, because it deals with so many things of the past, at the same time it is updating constantly. This is a very unique feature of Purana, which not many people have understood. For that matter, they ridicule Purana for the best good reason which has. For wrong reasons, they are ridiculing. In Veda, not even one utterance can be changed. If it is changed, it is said that their forefathers till the 7th generation, prior to them, forefathers, and then the progeny for 7th generation, on either side, total 14 generation will be ditched in the deeps of hell, like that we have the belief. It means Vedas cannot be tampered. And even Ramayana, Mahabharata also, we should not interpolate. Very few interpolations are there in Ramayana. Good lot of interpolations are found in Mahabharata. And yet our commentators, traditional commentators, identify them here and there. These are prakshepopi bhagah vyachayate. Though this part is prakshepa, interpolation, I am going to comment it for such and such reasons, like that they mention. They clearly demarcate. But in Purana, there I often call them as ancient Wikipedia. Our tradition's Wikipedia is Purana. Because in Wikipedia, everyone can add information and correct information. So gradually it will become fine-tuned. That's so in Purana it is that. Pura means oldest. Navam in that sense constantly updating will go on. Why? It is the common man source book. It is common person source book. In Purana we have so many details. For example, in Bhavishya Purana and even Kalki Purana, we have references to Queen Victoria. And we say that this Purana was written by the great sage Bhagavan Vedavyasa. How can it be? Our tradition believes that he had Divya Drishti, but we have constantly updated. In a very classic Purana, most reliable, one among the most reliable ancient Puranas, as modern scholars opine, Vishnu Purana, we have so many dynasties of the kings, whether it is Mauryan dynasty or Shunga dynasty or other dynasty, they have that. And even Nanda dynasty, all dynasties are given. Likewise, in Purana, we have so much of historicity. Why? Even the periods of Indus civilization, that is really Saraswati civilization, what happened? And how was the lineage of Yayati? Like that, in Purana, we have the Rajavamsha and Rishi Vamsha. Both are given in detail. Puranam Pancharakshanam. Sargascha Pratisargascha Vamsho Manvantaranicha. Vamshami Kirchanam Kirtanam Seva Puranam Panchalakshanam. It is said. Creation, recreation, or next steps in creation, or even deluge, or even withdrawal, as we call Pralaya, these two. And then Vamsha, the lineages of kings and sages, Manvantaranicha, the Manvantara, the 14 Manus, and Vamshanu Kirtanam, all the achievements of the people who came in different generations and all the lineages which came and their achievement and their successes and failures, all are being described there. And also certain Puranas are encyclopedic in nature, earlier I mentioned. That's how our common man used to get educated. For example, a Purana like Agni Purana, has so many details regarding so many Vidyas. Poetics, that is science which deals with poetry and the beauty of poem, nature of poetry, and the details of poetic marvel and poetic creation, Alankara, Dhvani, Rasa, Guna, Riti, Atma, Guna, Riti, Marga. There are so many things they are discussed there in Agni Purana. Agni Purana also discusses music, dance, sculpture, mathematics, and many things. Vishnu Dharmottara is a great Purana, Upa Purana, which deals with so many aspects of sculpture and painting and other things. Even today, to know about Indian painting, we have to resort to Chitra Sutradhyaya in Vishnu Dharmottara. Purana like Garuda. Many people are scared by hearing the name Garuda Purana, because it has to be recited only when death occurs in our family. No, it is not. It has to be ritually recited, but for education, one and all have to read it. In Garuda Purana, they have many details regarding Ayurveda, regarding taxonomy, plant classification, external morphology, and other things. In Garuda Purana, we have a section devoted to Rajani. One beautiful section, we have wonderful Subhashitas, very good sayings of wisdom. All these, and then it is a great therapeutic work also. People who are disturbed so much by the death of their nearest and dearest, how they can be consoled, that is one way. And then a Purana like Matsya and Vayu, they did so many other things connected with Puranic geography and other things. Like that Purana cater to the needs of the people, common folk, who are not bothered about the elaboration, who want to have things in brief. For them, they briefly, succinctly, in a comprehensive manner, in a very, very simple and lucid style, they give the details. That is how, if some people say that Indians, much of the Indian populace was kept in darkness, that is all taken away from knowledge. It is not completely right. Here and there, partial truth may be seen, but in majority, in totality, if we see, knowledge transferring has been constantly done. Knowledge transfer need not be done directly through reading or writing, but it can be done by word of mouth. Because we know in those days, printing was an impossibility and multiplication of the same copy was unheard. And that being the case, how to propagate it? Only by word of mouth. Maukhika. This is a very, very important one. And in our tradition, this is the best tradition which has kept, this is the best oral tradition that has kept intact all aspects of knowledge. If not, even today, the Vedic music, which started before 7,000 years, is even today perfectly intact. And also, the ragas which were, perhaps I often say, the ragas which are played on the flute of Krishna are even today heard by us. And the dances which Shiva and Parvati carried out, the same movements are even today performed. Like that, that intangibility has been constantly survived, constantly perpetuated. Then we have the other one, that is the 17th one, is Agama. Agama is the ritual manuals and codes of ritual which are centered around temple. Devalaya Sanskriti, as we call, Devalaya Sabhyata, that is rich in Agama. And here again, many people think that the temple tradition is something and the sacrificial tradition, yajna tradition, is something else. But we have clear evidences to show, starting from people like Stella Kramrisch, who has written in 2 volumes by name Hindu Temple, she has shown, and even many scholars, for example, Professor S.K. Ramchandra and other people, they have shown, and my own articles are there on that, how temple tradition is Vedic. The Vedic sacrificial methodology itself became temple. The 5 fires, they became 5 images in temple, and mainly we have 3 fires, Garhapatya, Ahvaniya and Dakshina. They take the role of Moola Bera, Utsava Bera, and then Snapana Bera or Bali Bera. Like that, we have the 3 Beras, 3 images in the temple. The Upastamba of Yajnashala becomes the Dvajastamba of temple. Like that, they have so many other parallels. And even in the Vedas also, we do have references to image and image worship. That's a separate topic, and that's why I'm not going to those details. What I mean is, the Agamas, they carry out the temple traditions. Means, yajna tradition, sacrificial tradition is seasonal, but temple is throughout the year. In that way, the temporary structures, when they become permanent, that is the change we see. That is the development and not adversity. Why I am mentioning temple tradition? Because our society even today is temple centric. We have so many villages which were classified as Alaya Shrita Grama and Grama Shrita Alaya. If a village is nurtured by a temple, if the village is dependent for its existence, dependent for its economical, social and other demands on a temple, then that village is called Alaya Shrita Grama. For example, take Melukote. Melukote is a great place, and that small hamlet, small town is entirely dependent for its economy, for its respect and all that around the temple of Idugiri Tirunarayana. He is called Shelvapillai, and then Cheluvanarayana in Kannada. And for example, a place like, for example, Tirupati. It is completely dependent on Tirumala Tirupati temples of Lord Venkateshwar or Srinivasa or Balaji. In that way, the whole village or town is dependent on a temple. Sometimes certain villages and certain towns may be given to a temple. Then temple will be dependent on this. This usually happens when the kings used to patronize these features. Then they used to give away the income of these villages, income or the tax collection of these villages or towns to those temples. Then the temple used to depend on the villages. Then the temple used to be Gramashrita Alaya. Like that, we had classifications in Agama. And depending upon the temple, so many other arts, so many vocations, so many professions, so many skills, and so many lives, they were survived, they were nurtured, and they were enriched. In our temple inscriptions, maximum inscriptions in India are found with respect to temples. The two, Tamil Nadu comes first and then Karnataka. Unfortunately, in North India, because of the invasion, ruthless invasion, thousands of temples were ruthlessly destroyed and were reduced to dust. But because of the great work of Bhagavan Vidyaranya Swamiji and others in South India, temple culture was saved. And that's why we have in so many inscriptions various castes, which were developed by professions, which were developed because of the need of profession, were all supported. There, a temple dancer used to be supported. To dancer, we should have musicians, both the vocalists and instrumentalists, and also people who used to cook for the Naivedyam, cook for the offering of the Lord, the cooks, and also people who used to read the garlands. Like that, we have clearly, and for the garlands and flowers and others, we had devoted gardens. In Karnataka, we have so many inscriptions there. It is called Shingara Tota. Garden meant for the beautification of the Lord, beautification of the deity. Like that. In that way, the society had so many openings and so many avenues in connection with a temple. And by the recent writings of good writers, popularized good material, dependable material on Indian culture in a very readable manner. For example, Dr. Sanjeev Sanyal, such people, if you look at the Churn of Ocean, Ocean Churn, a very popular book of him, you can see that even laymen can understand very lucid and simple English of him. There you can see how temples had their say in business, commerce, communication, and other things. And even agriculture used to be. How sophisticated is this and how meaningful? I shall give one example and conclude this portion of Agama, that is in connection with the temple of Puri, Jagannatha temple. There we have so much of bhoga, anna bhoga. Every day, so many times the Naivedyams have to performed, exceeding 100 items. And there, the Jagannatha Swami, specific types of paddy has to be grown. And that type of paddy has to yield a specific type of rice. And that's so many varieties of paddies are still saved. That is seen even in some temples of Karnataka also. Because of that specification of Agama, those rare breeds of plants, breeds of paddy, breeds of other grams and grains, they are saved. Even today, in Sri Vaishnava temples of South India, before 1000 years, Bhagavan Ramanujacharya, he prescribed Yatiraja Kattali. These are the prescriptions of Yatiraja, Bhagavan Ramanuja, that such and such food has to be offered as Naivedyam on such and such part of day. Like that, everything is calendared. For that, these things are saved. For that, such and such products are produced. Like that, there's so much in connection with the economy and society. Then finally, it is Darshana. In Darshana, we have all systems of philosophy. Astika Darshana, Nastika Darshana, both are respectfully treated. whether believers or non-believers, both had quest for philosophy, quest for knowing one's own self. In that sense, Charvaka, Jaina, and Bauddha in Nastika. And in Nastika, we have so many, whether it is Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Vedanta, and in Vedanta, so many categories. Dvaita, Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, Bheda, Bheda, Chintya Bheda, Bheda, Shuddha Dvaita, Pratyabhijna Shaiva, so many such things. Generally 16 in number we say, it can multiply, no problem. But that has to deal with 5 things. Jagat, Jiva, Ishvara, Bandha, and Moksha. The world and its nature, Jiva, life, the individual and its nature. Third, the Lord, who is the creator. If he or she or it exists, then it becomes Seshvara. If not, Nirishvara. Means Astika or Nastika. Even to reject God, one has to analyze God. Even to accept God, one has to think from the perspective of rejection in both the ways. And then Bandha. It is the bondage of ignorance and liberation from it, that is moksha. These 5 features have to be discussed. This is how all these put together, they become 4. Again repeating, it is Vyasa, Purana, Agama, and then Darshan. They joining the 4 Upavedas, 4 Vedas, and 6 limbs of the Veda are Vedanga, totally 18. This is how 18 Vidyasthana are developed in our tradition, and they are very well codified by great people like Bhagavan Madhusudan Saraswati. So this holistic background and the details have to be borne in mind. Then only we can look into any aspect of Indian culture with certain understanding and honesty of making justice to that pursuit. With this, I conclude today's deliberation. Questions or discussions can go on. Thank you. Namaskar. Dhanyavad.
It was an excellent discourse, sir. And I want to pose 2 questions to you. One, this was the way you significantly pointed out that we have been a musical society. That was something that somewhere in the subconscious mind we knew, but you deliberated on it very well. I just want to know, why is it that you mentioned a passing reference that South India has not maintained that, for example, in the weddings, etc. Normally, we associate South India as a more preserving kind of a part of the culture, preserving part of society, which has preserved the ancient culture more than what it has in the north. I may be wrong, but why is it that you think that this part of that culture has not been maintained and it has got in some way disrupted? And another thing that I want to ask you is, you have elaborated on that. I'm a political science student. So the chronology that we normally talk of in, like, for example, you Vedas and Dharma Shastras and whatever you said, you mentioned today, the biggest problem is regarding particular names, etc. For example, when we talk of Manu is talked about in the Vedas. We have Manu in the Dharma Shastras. He's considered as the progenitor or the first of the human race. At the same time, in the Manav Dharma Shastra, we talk of Manu, who has created, the lawgiver, who has written and created that. Similarly, whether it is Brihaspati or other characters also, or personages, it becomes very difficult, therefore, to distinguish as to which is just an abstract name and which. So how for a researcher or a young scholar who wants to comprehend, how does he distinguish and kind of identify with that chronology?
Very good questions. Let me try to answer. For first question first. Without any ill feeling for anything, being a South Indian, having a good acquaintance with all parts of South India, including their language, culture, and other things, food habits, and other things, Uh, when head becomes predominant, heart will recede.
Okay.
You see, one example I shall give. Our Adivasi Bandhu, Vanavasi Bandhu are there. They dance so naturally, they smile so naturally, even their utterance, the speech is so musical. But when you become more and more an urbanite, your body language is reduced. You speak in the form of whispers. Music is lost. Our villagers, they sing even while they are pounding, even while they are grinding, even while they are planting the saplings. Every time they have specific songs for that. But in cities, when we are cooking or when we are switching on the washing machine or when we are operating the dishwasher, we don't sing. You see, Yashoda used to churn for Makhan with song. But
Yeah, yeah.
today, when we are buttering the bread, we don't sing. When action is reduced, even action connected with music is also reduced. And we are so much bothered about the others who may think, and our houses are becoming smaller and smaller. Everyone will be listening to the other person's whispers and even thoughts. So we becoming so conscious of the world around. And that's how it has happened. When we are emotionally lit, it is natural to sing. And that's why when a person is going on the streets, speaking aloud prose, people immediately think that he is pagal. He is a mad person. But when he is singing and going, people think, Kushbash aadmi hai na, wo to gata chalta hai. So song will not make him a pagal, will not make him a mad person. It will make him a jovial person. That's what we need, Ananda. This is how. This is what. When we go away from Ananda in pursuit of other things, then naturally the song and other things. That's why our villagers have. As we become urbanites is westernization. You see, I told about Nritya and Natya. Natya is theatre. You see, our folk theatre, even today, it has lot of music and dance. But you come to a Delhi will be knowing NSD. There, how many are there? Recently, they start bringing folk inspiration and other things and all. But we do know people like Vijay Tendulkar and others, or Badal Sarkar and others. They wanted to rationalize things. They wanted to make people think. Music cannot make people think. Music makes people forget thinking. They cross Vijnanamaya Kosha, the thought, and go to Anandamaya Kosha.
Wow, wonderful, beautiful,
Wonderful.
beautiful.
What?
Good.
The real reason.
There is a question from. Sorry.
May I ask one question?
Please.
I would like to ask one question.
Let me
May I?
complete Shaila ji's.
Please.
One more question is there, and certainly I will come to you, sir. So regarding the chronology, it's a very, very important question, very, very intriguing question. For example, in Puranas, they have so many details regarding the people who are mentioned in the Vedas, who are mentioned in the Samhitas and Brahmanas. Modern scholars also agree that the present Puranas, they are far more recent when compared to those Vedic texts. They are far more ancient. But they forget one thing. Though the textual language is of recent origin, the content is not of recent origin. Today, if I write in modern language something connected with past, that information is not recent information, it is past information. If I am writing a story on Ashoka, I am writing the theme which is at least older by 2400 years. But just because I am using today's language, the time of that event will not become recent. In Puranas, the details regarding Rishivamsha and Rajvamsha, they are as old as the details found in the Vedas.
Okay.
This has not been revealed properly by a scholar, barring a few. Earlier itself, Mr. Pargiter, he wrote about Puranical chronology and others. He did a good thing. And recently, scholars like Dr. Navratna S. Rajaram, David Frawley, and others, they have focused on this aspect properly. But not many Indian scholars, because they were all carried by the Western scholarship. And hence, they thought that Purana, whatever contains, it is of recent origin, because it is changed by people, and it is something like Wikipedia. Constantly people are adding and removing, but they are dealing with the details of that. So also, you took the example of Manu. Manu is mentioned even in the Vedas, even in the Purana, even the Manusmriti is there.
Yes.
Manava Dharma Shastra is there. These people, they are recollecting. What is Smriti? Smriti means recollecting something and reproducing it. It means I am recollecting from memory and not reproducing verbatim in the language which I know. In that sense, the message of Manu is fundamental in Manusmriti, but the details they are added to. That's why these are Paurusheya, means they are man-made. Manusmriti is also Paurusheya, like Purana, like Itihasa, but the Vedas are Paurusheya like that. And hence, timely additions have been made. And that has been clearly noticed by our commentators also. And every commentator, Manusmriti has 9 available commentaries. Some of them are complete and some of them are partial. Here and there, they are lacunae. And such commentators clearly indicate and they give such updating. For example, Medatithi, who hailed from perhaps from Gujarat, he was the earliest commentator of Manusmriti. He writes all that happened, all that in the light of his times, and gives that comment. In that way, we have to make a bit of deeper study, then you will be knowing. But the basic core philosophy is like that. And Manu followed the Sutrakaras, Apastambha, Ashwalayana, and others, who were the seers of his time. That has been followed. That's how we can look into these things. And now, shall I request Vajpayee ji?
Vajpayee ji, may I interrupt you for 1 minute if you don't mind?
I'll reserve my queries and everything, and opportunity opportunity to other persons to ask the questions.
Vajpayee ji, there is one Purva Bhatt raising hand for long time. उसके बाद आप बोलेंगे तो
नहीं मैं शांत हो जाता हूं. पूर्वा एंड
क्रम बना लेता हूं जी. Purva Bhatt ji, you can take your question by asking directly. By
yes, sir. So I would dare to ask it before Vajpayee, sir.
Could you put your video also? So we are recording it, please.
Please do.
Okay. Because I'm traveling, I don't think it's dark. My video, is it visible?
Yeah, okay. Is it okay? You introduce yourself first,
okay.
Please.
So I am Purva Bhatt. Currently, I am a research scholar at Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur. And so it's such a privilege and a daunting task to even pose a question in front of the honorable and distinguished speaker, but I would dare to ask. And please ignore it if it's very naive, but I would pose that as a society, I often wonder that are we putting a lot of gravitas on science? And when I say science, science has been currently defined and dominated by the Western paradigm. And when I say that, I wish to ask that when we say science, it comes down to the point that anything which has evidence, which can be proved, is considered knowledge. So knowledge per se becomes subordinate to the scientific methodologies and scientific knowledge. Is it true? First of all, I ask it. And secondly, if not or if yes, how should we try to incorporate everything else? When I say that, I say things which the current scientific paradigm ignores, the current scientific framework ignores into the present curriculum. Can we imagine a curriculum without discussion of, I know we've been very serious about the words, but I would still use the words metaphysics. Can we talk on things which includes metaphysics per se in a syllabus, and how do we include it? How do we put it into a discourse, discussions? Because end of the day, you make a discussion, you try to put forward a discussion, and if it comes down to evidence, are we sort of discounting and limiting a sphere of what we call as knowledge, and putting a lot of gravitas to the current scientific methodology, which I would say is dominated not by our civilizational methods, but Western methods. I would rest it on that, and would want an answer, or probably मैं चाहती हूँ मेरी जो queries हैं वो ली जाएं. That's it.
Thank you, Srimati Purva Bhattji. Thank you. I'm not going to the details of metaphysics, as I will be discussing that in detail in the next meeting. So I will restrict it to the first part of your question. That is, so much of importance is wrong importance is being given to science. And in reality, science is a systematic study. Completely agree with it. Certainly, it is a laudable thing. And that has been, even the West also, systematic study is that it is called science. That's why we have classification like physical sciences, biological sciences, psychological sciences, normative sciences, and so many other sciences being treated discretely. In our tradition also, Shastra is the exact equivalent of science. Shasanat, Shamsanat, Shastram. That which has new truths, Shamsana, and prescriptions that it has to be done. So a methodology, a logical methodology, that is Shasana, and sequential order, that is Shasana. Shasana is order, and Shamsana is newer revelation. That's so we have both the aspects in Shastra, and that's why we have something like Ayurveda Shastra is there, and then Shilpa Shastra is there, and then Rasa Shastra. Rasa Shastra is alchemy and chemistry, and then we have Alankara Shastra, poetics, and then Natya Shastra, Chanda Shastra. Like that, we have so many systematic studies. But today, especially in these 50 or 60 years in India, we are maddened by the achievements of physical sciences and their applied form, that is technology. We are enamored by the advantages we are getting through technology. And that's why in whatever we say as science, in a very narrow sense, we are defining it. And that's why we are becoming so inferiority like. We are so having so much of inferiority complex, and that's why try to prove everything that it is scientific in our tradition. Whether Ganesha having elephant head, or we are having Rangoli, and that is to avoid insects like that. In so many ways, whether we have the distance between sun and moon mentioned in the Veda or not, we have the speed of light, whether we may have it or not, it's a separate thing. But we are facing so much of insecurity in front of the towering, imposing science and technology, and that's why we are trying to manipulate our knowledge so as to suit with the tunes. We are dancing to the wrong tunes of modern science and technology in the restricted form. That is wrong. We need not have any such inferiority complex. We should not even have any superiority complex. We should have no complexes. We should be simple, straightforward, and confident. And for that itself, I am giving these deliberations. I shall discuss other part of your question regarding metaphysics in our next meeting, which is very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ganesh ji. आदरणीय वाजपेयी जी, आप प्रश्न रखें.
मेरा बहुत ही संक्षेप सा प्रश्न है. गणेश, मैं हिंदी में ही बात करूंगा. आजकल जो राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति है, वो लिबरल आर्ट्स की काफी बात करती है, और हम भी आर्ट्स की बात कर रहे हैं. और इन्होंने अपने एक कादम्बरी, बाणभट्टी कादम्बरी को उल्लेख किया है, जिसमें 64 कलाओं की बात की गई है. हमारे यहाँ 16 कलाओं के अवतार भगवान श्री कृष्ण को बताया गया है संपूर्ण. तो इसमें कुछ भेद है क्या, या 16 कलाएं हैं और 64 विद्याएं हैं, कि 16 विद्याएं हैं, 64 कलाएं? इसको थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन कर दीजिए. एंड द आर्ट which you are talking about, which is composite art inclusive of the music, dance and everything, this liberal arts is equal to that art which you are just talking about. Please explain these two queries.
Very beautiful. Dhanyavad. Kala means part. That is one of the meanings of kala. 1/16th, 1/16th of a whole is called kala, and that's why Chandra Kala we say. They have, including Amavasya, there are 16 kala. On the day of full moon day, on the new moon day, that's on Amavasya. We don't see moon, but the moon is not non-existent. It is not seen, and that's why that is another kala. The 15 other kalas, starting from Pratipat to Purnima and then Amavasya. That's so. Then we have 64 arts, as mentioned in Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra. In the beginning itself, we have all the 64 arts. From the Buddhist tradition, we have Lalita Vistara, Buddhist Sanskrit, hybrid Sanskrit, as modern scholars say. That work, it is earlier to Vatsyayana, that's what modern scholars opine. There we have 86 arts. And then we have from the Jain tradition of Prabandha Chintamani, we have 73 Vidyas. So we have different numbers. But in these arts, we have many categories. We have arts, we have sports, we have literary sports, and we have crafts, and we have other skills. Totally, all these are put together becoming 64 kala. For example, we have something like Pushpa Shakatika, one art. What is Pushpa Shakatika? Floral arrangement. It is nothing but Ikebana. Ikebana. Once I was invited to perform a show on flowers, a poetic performance for a Ikebana show, to which Japanese High Commissioner was the chief guest. In my deliberations, I told, you have preserved our Pushpa Shakatika as mentioned by Vatsyayana, at least 2000 years old, and that has been brought forward from Japan in the modern times to us. But this art, this has evolved as an art. We see that in Vatsyayana. And in Lalita Vistara, we have one art of washing vessels. Washing vessels. Can it become an art? Yes, it can also become an art as a skill. So it is a skill. And we have Sutra Karma. Sutra Karma means using thread, creating so many marvels. People here may be remembering how by using a loop, by using the fingers, various types of designs can be done, and by how crochet work can be done. It is a craft. Like that, so many such arts, crafts, skills. And for example, Khatga Vidya, Dhanur Vidya, these are all martial arts. They were all used. And Malla Yuddha, like that. And then some techniques, some feats like Agnistambha, Jalastambha, such things, they were all used. And hence, our definition of art, Kala, in these works has a bigger frame than mere art as it is being now told. And how to incorporate in our education and all, I don't know because I am not an educationist. I have not laid my hands on the system of education and others. I'm a student of our culture, that's all.
Thank you. Amarjeet ji.
Any other question?
There are two more questions. One has been raised by Snehil Kakkad. Snehil Kakkad, you can take your question, please, by unmuting yourself.
And you can introduce yourself, Snehil.
Okay, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I'm Dr. Snehil Kakkad, a student of Ma'am Rai, and I'm an assistant professor of political science in the Department of Political Science, Lady Shri Ram College for Women, New Delhi. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us an opportunity to be a part of these lecture series, and my greetings to all the esteemed guests and the organizers of this lecture series. Thank you. My question to you, sir, is whenever I look at a piece of art, the primary response that comes to me is certainly aesthetic enjoyment, as you say. But simultaneously, what comes to me is also a thought which gets provoked, and along with that, a bombardment of thoughts in my mind. Who made this art? What would have been at the back of the mind of the artist? What all must be going on? What series, what events must have inspired him or her? So along with aesthetic enjoyment, my mind starts thinking. If the primary objective of art is certainly to make your thoughts rest, then is my mind having a specific trait of thinking too much? Or it is something that happens to everybody and my mind needs a particular training, if per se? Thank you so
Very
much,
good
sir.
question. Very good question. Yes, this has two aspects. My answer will be having two aspects. Enrichment, intellectual enrichment, and a sort of education and a sort of intellectual stimulus is also part of art experience, but that is not devoid of enjoyment. That's why the great Acharya Abhinav Gupta, greatest figure in the Indian aesthetics, he writes while commenting upon Bharata and Anandavardhana, न चैते प्रीति व्युत्पत्ति भिन्न रूपे एव द्वयोरपि एक विषयत्वात्. Enjoyment and enlightenment are no two different things in art. They are one and the same. First we have enjoyment, we are lost, and then as we know Wordsworth defines, poetry is emotions recollected in tranquility.
Yes.
Similar to it, here, after enjoyment, we become aware of enjoyment and we think. But without enjoyment, if you think, art becomes idle curiosity. We can use art for different purposes, but we should never forget the primary purpose. Many times, our people are so mesmerized by the interest of the Western people or foreigners towards our arts. A great scholar in Indian aesthetics, especially with musicology and danceology, Dr. R. Satyanarayana from Mysore. Unfortunately, we lost him before a year or so. He says, if these Western people are non-Indians, they come and watch our dance. That's why our dancers will feel elated. But they may be curious to know how the alka has been painted on the fingers and how the bells are wreathed and how they are tied and how that peculiar costume fits well in their body. Like that, their curiosity may be wandering over here and there. But we are unable to know that. We think that they are enjoying. Like that, such a curiosity without enjoyment is of no use. I can give an example. A doctor went to a painting exhibition. One painting was hanging, a very beautiful painting, dying man. That was the title. A person was in his deathbed. Doctor was keenly observing, and the painter came and wanted to know how he is interested. Then he said, it's a typical case of malaria. Means doctor was diagnosing the patient who was painted and not enjoying. For example, a painting which has subject of an old, ugly woman, but it has been painted so well. Should we call it as ugly or beautiful? It's a beautiful painting of an ugly woman. But the painting is beautiful. If you look at the reality, it may be ugly. If you look at the art, it is beautiful. First, we have to enjoy the beauty of the art and then know about the reality which is represented there, that is about the ugliness. They are not opposed to each other, but first it is the enjoyment.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Seema ji is there for her question. Seema ji, please come.
Pranam sir, and thank you so much to give me opportunity to ask something, and it gives me immense pleasure to listen from all of you. Sir, actually,
could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, sir. Myself, Seema Bansal student of political science, and at present I am teaching political science as a political science lecturer in government school. And nowadays I am taking live classes, and the concept of justice is being taught by me to my students. And a question is in my mind, that is the concept of justice is a part of our theory of state. It is attached with that theory of state, or it is separately mentioned in our Veda or Upanishad?
Well, Seemaji,
This is my question.
you want to know whether justice, the concept of justice, is it mentioned in the Vedas or it's a later concept?
Yes,
Fine.
yes.
Here,
Is it associated with the theory of state? Yes.
Yes,
or justice or any such legal aspect, if you are mentioning the word justice from the background of legal aspect or political aspect, it's a narrow framework. Beyond that, we have a bigger one. For example, the truth that is expected in law, in jurisprudence, is something which is narrower but not round. But the concept of truth that is being discussed in philosophy is much more wider and deeper. In that way, justice in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, takes a deeper and bigger domain. While that being given in our Dharma Shastra as part of Vyavahara Adhyaya, Vyavahara means our legal proceedings, judiciary and other things. There also justice comes. But it is in the modern parlance how we see. But even more bigger when compared to the modern days justice, our ancient days, similar legal procedures had a bigger domain, bigger frame, and bigger connotations of justice. In the Vedas, we have even far bigger. For example, in the Atharva Veda, which are the things which hold the earth properly? We all know that Earth is rotating around Sun, one among the planets in our solar system, something like that. How come the Earth, without falling, without missing its orbit, how it is standing firmly on its orbit? That's what thought by our Atharva Vedic people, and they said, Vratamugram Satyam Brahat Diksha Yajnastapo Prathivim Dharayanti, like that. Vratamugram Satyam Brahat. Which are the things which hold the earth? Means the Vrata, the cosmic order. Within the cosmic order, Vrata, the concept of justice comes. Order should always be backed by just. The word justice has come from just. Just means as it is. That reality. Vratamugram Satyam Sat. Sat, from that Sat, it has come Satyam. Vratamugram Satyam Brahat, the order. And then truth, reality. These two hold the earth, means even the society, even the people, they should be held properly by these concepts of justice. That is what the Veda means.
There is a last question from Radha Kumari. Radha ji, please ask. This will be the last question. After that, I want to also inform you that the President Tripathi ji, who is chairing this session, has come already long back, and then he would be delivering his presidential address, which would be followed by Sanjay Satyarthi ji vote of thanks. So this is the sequence, sir. The last question. Radha ji, please take your question.
Please unmute.
आपकी आवाज अनम्यूट नहीं हो पाई है अभी तक। यदि नहीं अनम्यूट कर पा रही है तो क्वेश्चन टाइप करिए, मैं पूछ लूंगा। आवाज नहीं आ रही। आप अपने क्वेश्चन को चैट बॉक्स में टाइप करेंगे तो मैं पढ़ दूंगा।
मैं छोड़ दीजिए।
अच्छा ठीक है
हेलो
जी।
Please.
हाँ हाँ आइए आइए
ओके
हाँ अभी आगे ठीक है बोलिए।
आगे परिचय दीजिएगा अपना पहले।
ओके मैं राधा कुमारी, माता सुंदरी कॉलेज दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर हूँ और पॉलिटिकल साइंस पढ़ाती हूँ। सभी के लिए प्रणाम। मेरे पहली क्षमा याचना, क्योंकि मैंने शुरुआत में ऑल्दो टाइम से ज्वाइन किया था, लेकिन मेरे लैपटॉप में कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो गई उसके माइक्रोफोन में, तो कुछ सुनाई नहीं दे रहा था, तो मैंने शुरुआत का बहुत कुछ मिस कर दिया, तो इसलिए हो सकता
नहीं
है मेरे
आप मिस नहीं करेंगी, सारा रिकॉर्डिंग मिलेगा यूट्यूब और फेसबुक पे।
नहीं, मेरा मतलब ये है कि मेरे जो सवाल हैं हो सकता है उनके उत्तर उसमें हों, तो अगर मैं पूछूं तो ये ऐसा ना समझा जाए कि ये पहले से दिया गया जवाब है। दूसरा
कुछ नहीं समझेगा, आप पूछिए ना, कोई बिना संकोच के। ठीक है
ओके। और सर मेरे को क्योंकि वही जो पूर्वा ने कहा कि मुझे मतलब खुद की लिमिटेशंस के साथ ये सवाल पूछ रही हूँ कि मेरी अपनी नॉलेज सीमित है इन मामलों में। तो पहली बात तो ये कि मुझे वेदों के बारे में ये जानना है कि जैसे आपने पुराणों के लिए कहा कि पुराण पौरुषेय हैं, मानव निर्मित हैं, जबकि वेदों को हम अपौरुषेय कहते आए हैं और उनको हम प्रामाणिक ज्ञान कहते आए हैं। और वेदों के बारे में जो जो इंटरप्रिटेशंस जो हमने सुने हैं वो ये कि वेद ब्रह्मा की वाणी है, तो वो ईश्वर कृत हैं, इसलिए उन पर सवाल नहीं उठाया जा सकता। और आपने एक बात कही अपने इस लेक्चर में, अपने उद्बोधन में, कि वेदों को टेम्पर नहीं किया जा सकता। तो मुझे एक तो ये चीजें जाननी है कि क्योंकि मैंने जो रिसेंट इंटरप्रिटेशन सुनी है वेदों के बारे में, वो ये कि वेद जो एक आलोचना के उत्तर में दी गई थी, ये इंटरप्रिटेशंस, आलोचना ये थी कि वेद ब्राह्मणों के द्वारा लिखे गए और इसलिए सामान्य जनता की वेदों तक अप्रोच नहीं थी, और ब्राह्मणों ने अपने ब्राह्मणिकल डोमिनेंस को, अपने आधिपत्य को जारी रखने के लिए वेदों को बनाया और सामान्य जनता को उनसे दूर रखा गया। तो ये प्रत्युत्तर में ये कहा गया कि नहीं, वेद ब्राह्मणों द्वारा नहीं, सामान्य जनता के द्वारा रचे गए थे। इवन किसान लोग जब खेती करते वक्त जो हाइम्स गाते थे, वो हाइम्स वेदों में है। और ये इवन हर कला, जीवन के हर क्षेत्र, चाहे वो बच्चे के जनन की प्रक्रिया है या कृषि की प्रक्रिया है या पाक कला है, हर जीवन का हर क्षेत्र उसमें है, और ये सामान्य मानव जीवन मानवी के द्वारा रचित है। तो इसमें कौन सा वर्जन सही है, कौन सा इंटरप्रिटेशन सही है? दूसरा ये तो दूसरा मेरा जो सवाल ये है कि अगर वेदों
एक ही प्रश्न ले तो अच्छा रहेगा, समय ज्यादा हो चुका है, अगली बार आप आएंगी तो अच्छा रहेगा। अभी 5 बार मिलेंगे हम लोग और कम से कम, क्योंकि समय को हम लोग आधा घंटा पहले क्रॉस कर चुके हैं जी।
ओके ओके
Okay, thank you. One thing I have to say, the Vedas, as Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharvan, they are human made. But Veda's knowledge, Veda as knowledge, as jnana, it is beyond human comprehension. That's why in our tradition it is clearly said, Vedaha apaurusheyam, apaurusheyah, Vedaha munidarshan. Means Vedaha means specification, Rik, Yajur, Sama and Atharva. These are the concrete things which are available. But the truth revealed by them, it is apaurushaya. This has evidence in Bhagavan Panini. Bhagavan Panini in his Panini Sutras, Ashtadhyayi, in the 4th chapter, he says, Tena Proktam, a sutra is being made. There he clearly says, the meaning of the Veda, the import of the Veda is the eternal, while the verbal form is temporal. Means the Rupa of the Veda, the linguistic form of the Veda is Manav Nirmita, is Rishi Prokta, is Paurushaya. But the truth of it, the import of it, the Artha, the Saramsha, the Tattva of it is eternal. And Vedas are not Brahmin priest craft. It is not. Having read all the Vedas with the commentary, I am very clear about that. We have, as you said, we have so much in connection with the common people. Everything is there. Sita Yajna discusses about farmers. It is discussing Krishi. And then we have something Kavasha Ilusha's Akshasukta, which is dealing with gambling. In Atharva Veda has so many. And Vedic Rishis, they came from all strata of the society. They are from all castes. There are many women, many men, many kings were there, many Shudras were there. For example, the Aponapri Sukta, as revealed by Kavasha Ilusha, was a Shudra and was a gambler. There are many such parts in the Veda, and there were dark men, fair men, and all are there. For example, Ambrani, a great seer, she realized the highest truth, and she is a Rishika in Veda. The seer, when she is a woman, she is called Rishika. There are more than 40 women like that. So Veda is composed literally from all people, but the truth of the Veda is the eternal. That is how our tradition has clearly demarcated.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। मैं आदरणीय प्रोफेसर त्रिपाठी जी से निवेदन करूंगा अपने अध्यक्षीय उद्बोधन को हमें प्रदान करें।
अमरजीव जी,
आपका परिचय गणेश जी से हुआ होगा, फिर भी आपकी अनुमति लेता हूं। अभी आप उपकुलपति हैं, अमरकंटक में सारे कांटों को दूर करते हुए बड़े उच्च कार्य में लगे हुए हैं। बाकी आप लोगों की बातचीत हुई होगी, अभी दर्शकों को पता चले। कई विषयों के ज्ञाता रहे और सोशल साइंस के हमारे RSVP की एसोसिएशन के कार्यकारिणी समिति के बहुत ही प्रमुख सदस्य हैं। जी, छोटा सा परिचय दे रहा हूँ, क्षमा करेंगे। मैं आपको आमंत्रित करता हूँ अपने अध्यक्षीय उद्बोधन।
आप सभी को नमन। परम तेजस्वी और वंदनीय, मैं शतावधानी गणेश जी कहूँ अथवा शास्त्रावधानी गणेश जी कहूँ, मैं स्वयं नहीं समझ पा रहा हूँ। आपके सुनने के बाद मुझे लगता है कि विद्याओं का कोश, भंडार और विद्या का सागर आप में समाहित है। इसकी चर्चा मैं आप द्वारा दिए गए वक्तव्य के क्रम में संक्षेप में करूंगा। हम सभी के संरक्षक और मेरे लिए तो बहुत कुछ, मेरे स्वयं के भी संरक्षक और पथ प्रदर्शक परम माननीय प्रोफेसर कृष्ण भट्ट जी, RSVP के सम्मानित और यशस्वी अध्यक्ष, जिनसे काव्य धारा निःसृत होती रहती है, प्रोफेसर एरियन वाजपेयी जी, माननीय डॉक्टर शीला राय जी, मेरी बहुत शुभेच्छ बोधा वाजपेयी जी कहते रहते हैं, परम आदरणीय प्रोफेसर राजकुमार भाटिया जी, इस कार्यक्रम के माध्यम से हम सभी को ज्ञान की धारा का बोध कराने वाले डॉक्टर अमरजीव लोचन जी, माननीय संजय सत्यार्थी जी, रमेश सारियान जी और सभी सम्मानित महानुभाव, देवीगण देवी और सभी दक्ष श्रोतागण जो इसमें प्रतिभाग भी कर रहे थे, और वे सभी जो किसी न किसी रूप में इस कार्यक्रम को देख रहे हैं, सुन रहे हैं और समझ भी रहे हैं, आप सभी को मेरा नमन। अभी तकनीकी कारणों से 2 या 3 मिनट बाद मैं संबद्ध हो सका था, लेकिन बात मैंने पूरी सुनी। और जब गणेश जी को मैं शतावधानी और सहस्त्रावधानी कहने का प्रामाणिक अधिकारी नहीं हूँ, जब मैं उन्हें सुनता हूँ तो लगता है कि भारत की जो 3 धाराएं हैं, चिंतन परंपरा, ज्ञान परंपरा और बोध परंपरा, तीनों की त्रयी, त्रिवेणी या संगम से वह कांति धारा निकल रही है, जिसको सुनने के बाद अज्ञानता दूर होती चली जाती है। यद्यपि इस मानव शरीर से अज्ञानता को दूर हटा पाना पूर्णतः मेरे जैसे व्यक्ति के लिए संभव नहीं है, लेकिन जितनी देर मैं उन्हें सुनता हूं तो लगता है कि अनिद्रा कोई शब्द है और निद्रा दूसरा उसका प्रतिकूल भाव है। दोनों से ऊपर उठता है मनुष्य जब गणेश जी को सुनने की स्थिति आती है। इस स्थिति में मैं था, मैं स्थित प्रज्ञ तो नहीं हूं, प्रज्ञावान भी नहीं हूं, लेकिन इन दोनों को समझने की मैं कोशिश करता हूं कि स्थिति प्रज्ञता क्या है और ज्ञानी कौन है। तो इतना तो मैं कह सकता हूं कि दोनों का एक रूप अगर मैं देखूं तो मेरे सामने गणेश जी भी दिख रहे हैं और दूसरी तरफ हम सभी के संरक्षक प्रोफेसर कृष्ण भट्ट जी भी दिख रहे हैं। इस पूरी चर्चा में वेद, वेदांग, उपवेद और वेदांत दर्शन के पश्चात जो समापन हो रहा था वहां थोड़ा रोचक ज्ञानवर्धक प्रसंग भी आया जब माननीय वाजपेयी जी ने कादम्बरी की 64 कलाओं का संदर्भ लिया और उसके बाद तुरंत गणेश जी ने प्रबंध चिंतामणि में वर्णित 73 विद्याओं का संदर्भ लिया। तो वेद से लेकर 73 विद्याओं तक की यात्रा पूरी करना, ध्यान मग्न होकर उस लोक में पहुंचना है जहां किसी चीज का अभाव नहीं होता है। अर्थात जब हम तत्व दर्शन को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं तो हम इस भाव लोक के ऊपर होते हैं। उस स्थिति में पहुंचाने में दक्ष, प्रवीण और पारंगत माननीय शतावधानी गणेश जी को बार बार नमन। जब हम वेद के बारे में चर्चा करते हैं तो हिंदुस्तान की जितनी विधाएं हैं जिन्हें हम अपौरुषेय ग्रंथों के माध्यम से समझने की कोशिश करते हैं वह सब विधाएं दिख जाती हैं। वह चाहे प्रज्ञामूलक हो अथवा तत्वमूलक हो, दोनों उससे निःसृत होती हैं। और इन विधाओं के माध्यम से, जैसा आप बता रहे थे हम लोगों को, ऋग्वेद, अथर्ववेद, सामवेद और यजुर्वेद में किस तरह से गति, मोशन, किस तरह से सद्गति, आत्मदर्शन, यानी गति से लेकर और सद्गत तक की यात्रा के बीच में कितने पड़ाव होते हैं और सारे हमारे ग्रंथ बताते हैं। चाहे वो वैदिक ग्रंथ हो, औपनिषदिक हो, दर्शन जहां पर हम लोगों ने आज विश्राम लिया, खट दर्शन की स्थिति में आकर संभवतः अगले वक्तव्य में हम लोग खट दर्शन के बारे में विस्तार से सुनेंगे, न्याय, वैशेषिक, सांख्य, योग, पूर्व मीमांसा और वेदांत के बारे में। लेकिन चर्चा हुई आज मूल रूप से वेद के बारे में, वेदांत के बारे में, उपवेद के बारे में, और फिर वहां से हम लोग सीधे उतरे पुरुषार्थ, और उसमें पुरुषार्थ के अर्थ को साधना के रूप में ढालते हुए नाट्य, काव्य, चित्त और शिल्प तक। जब हम शिल्प और काव्य की चर्चा करते हैं तो मूलतः हमारी रचनात्मक प्रवृत्तियों का उससे बोध होता है, और हर वह रचना जिसका आपने विस्तार से वर्णन किया, चाहे वो शिल्प के रूप में हो, कला के रूप में हो, नाट्य के रूप में हो, संगीत के रूप में हो, गायन के रूप में हो, निर्माण और स्थापत्य के रूप में हो, जब हम इस पर विचार करते हैं तो हमें कुछ चीजें लगती हैं कि कला के फलक क्या हैं। आकर्षण, अनुराग, अनुकरण, आह्लाद और आराधन, इसी के बीच में सभी कलाएं हमें अपनी ओर ले जाती हैं। इस पर हम लोग आगे और भी आपसे विस्तार से सुनने की कामना रखते हैं। लेकिन मूल चर्चा जो संगीत के बारे में आपने शुरू किया कि संगीत में जाकर हम किस स्थिति में पहुंचते हैं और हमारी कला किस प्रकार की है और पश्चिम की कला किस प्रकार की है। पश्चिम की कला में माना जाता है कि आर्ट शुड मेक पीपल थिंक, ये पश्चिम की मान्यता है। और हमारे यहाँ है कि यह तो विश्रांति का द्योतक है, जहाँ मोशन को विश्राम मिलता है, जीवन को विराम मिलता है, और इस विश्राम विराम में हमें राम राम मिलता है, अर्थात तत्व की साधना मिलती है, सत्य का दर्शन होता है, जहां जाकर आपने अपनी बात को समाप्त किया था। इस यात्रा में धर्म क्या है, हमारा धर्म किस प्रकार का है, बाइबल का भी आपने उसमें दृष्टांत दिया कि यह गॉस्पेल है, पोएम नहीं है, जबकि हमारे रामायण और पुराण में गीत काव्य का विशद विधान है, और रामायण तो आदि ग्रंथ है हम लोगों के ज्ञात इतिहास का। और जहां तक पुराणों का प्रश्न है, पुराण के कई संदर्भ आते हैं और आपने उसके बारे में विधिवत वर्णन किया, उसके बारे में हमारे जैसा व्यक्ति कुछ नहीं कर सकता। एक संदर्भ और भी आता है गीता में, जब आत्मा का परिचय कराते हैं भगवान, अजो नित्य शाश्वतो यम पुराणो, तो वहां पुरातनता, सामयिकता, आधुनिकता और आगत सभी का बोध करा देते हैं इसके माध्यम से। हमारा जो पुराण है, जिसको हम कभी कभी इतिहास कहते हैं, ऐसा घटित हुआ है, ऐसा घटित होता रहता है, ऐसा घटित होगा, तब हम इस शास्त्रीय परंपरा में इतिहास दर्शन करते हैं। जब हम वेदों के बारे में पढ़ते हैं तो हम भूगोल दर्शन करते हैं और उसके बाद शासन दर्शन भी करते हैं। हमारे सभी वेद, विशेषकर ऋग्वेद और अथर्ववेद में गण, सभा, समिति, विदत, ये सब आते हैं। फिर भूम माता, भूमि पुत्रो अहम पृथिव्या के रूप में हम भूगोल का भी दर्शन कर लेते हैं। फिर जन क्या है इसके माध्यम से, और फिर समाज का विवेचन करते हैं क्रमशः। समाज, अर्थशास्त्र, राजनीति शास्त्र, जिसके ग्रंथ का आपने परिचय कराया हम से, अर्थशास्त्र का जो चाणक्य का है, वह भी एक परंपरा है हमारे यहाँ अर्थशास्त्र की, और जिसका बृहद स्वरूप हमें मिलता है उस अर्थशास्त्र में, जिसे हम लोगों के सामने लाने का काम इधर सामा शास्त्री जी ने किया था। तो कौटिल्य का जो अर्थशास्त्र है उसमें आपने बताया हम लोगों को कैसे प्रशासन भी है, कैसे अर्थनीति भी है, कैसे शासन नीति भी है, कैसे विदेश नीति भी है। तो समाज विज्ञान के जितने प्रिय विषय हैं अथवा जितने अधिष्ठान हैं, सब उसमें निःसृत हो रहे थे आपके वक्तव्य में, जिससे हम लोग पूर्णतः आप प्लावित भी हो रहे थे। लेकिन आपने एक बात थोड़ा और भी अच्छी की, तो संगीत के बारे में, कि अभी भी उत्तर भारत में जो स्पिरिट ऑफ म्यूजिक है वो शादी विवाह के समय साफ साफ द्रष्टव्य होता है। तो थोड़ा इससे अंदर गुदगुदी भी हुई, और विशेष करके जो वाद्य यंत्र हैं जिनका वैदिक शास्त्रों में भी उल्लेख है, बीड़ा, ड्रम, मृदंग, सारंगी, बांसुरी, इससे होते हुए फिर आपने रिचुअल्स के बारे में बहुत अच्छी चर्चा की कि वेद से 3 चीजें ध्वनित होती हैं, रिचुअल्स, आर्ट और फिलॉसफी। और आर्ट के बारे में तो हम लोगों ने पहले ही चर्चा कर लिया। रामायण में जब हम लोग पहुंचते हैं तो वेद से जो दर्शन की धारा होती है, जीवात्मा, परमात्मा और अविद्या, सीता, प्रभु राम और रावण के माध्यम से आपने उसकी व्यक्ति की। और यह भी कि रॉन्ग अंडरस्टैंडिंग मेक्स वर्स सारोफिल, कि अगर हम गलत समझते हैं या कुछ हमारी अन्यथा सोच होती है तो सुंदर संसार भी कभी कभी दुखदाई हो जाता है, अशोक वन की तरह। अशोक का आशय तो उस समय यही था, लंका में अशोक वन ऐसा स्थान था जहां जाने पर शोक ही समाप्त हो जाता है, लेकिन माँ जानकी के बैठने से वो अशोक वन शोक वन हो गया था, और तभी से अशोक का वृक्ष भी आदरणीय वृक्ष नहीं रहा। पांडव कौरव के माध्यम से आपने धर्म, अधर्म और न्याय, अन्याय के बारे में जो निरूपण किया वो हम लोगों के बोध से बहुत आगे चल करके है, और वस्तुतः हम लोगों के लिए पाथेय यह बनेगा रहेगा। फिर जो प्रसंग आपने व्यास वाल्मीकि के दिए, पुराण को आपने एंशिएंट विकिपीडिया कहा, विकिपीडिया तो आप हैं हम लोगों के लिए, कि जिस भी धर्म ग्रंथ के बारे में पूछे आप उसके बारे में साधिकार बताने लगते हैं। पुराण, विष्णु पुराण से लेकर भविष्य पुराण तक। विष्णु पुराण भी भारत के स्वरूप के बारे में विधिवत वर्णन करता है। फिर जो संहिताएं हैं उनका भी चर्चन, पुराणों में राजवंश, ऋषि वंश का उल्लेख, क्रिएशन और रिक्रिएशन कैसे होता रहता है इसका उल्लेख, या वस्तुतः हम लोगों के लिए बहुत अधिक ज्ञानवर्धक है। अग्नि पुराण का भी उल्लेख है इसमें। राजनीति का सर्वश्रेष्ठ ग्रंथ है अग्नि पुराण। राजा के गुण क्या होने चाहिए, धर्म क्या होने चाहिए, दायित्व क्या होने चाहिए, और शासन संचालन किस तरह से होना चाहिए, इसका भी विधिवत विधान है। और फिर शुरू में मैंने कहा गति और सदगति, सदगति के लिए आवश्यक है कि हम थोड़ा गरुड़ पुराण पर भी जाएं, कि केवल यह लौकिक जगत ही हमारा निर्धारक नहीं है, इसके ऊपर भी एक पारलौकिक जगत है जिससे हमारे जीवन का निर्धारण होता है, और वह किस तरह अच्छा बने इसके लिए जरूर गरुड़ पुराण के बारे में पढ़ना चाहिए। फिर आगम के माध्यम से यज्ञ ट्रेडिशन, यज्ञ परंपरा के बारे में ग्रामालय से लेकर देवालय तक का जो आपने हमें बोध कराया, बस उसके बारे में जितना कहें उतना कम ही है। और अंत में दर्शन के विषय, जगत, जीव, ईश्वर, बंधन और मोक्ष, यहाँ तक की यात्रा हम लोगों ने आज आपके साथ की। और इस यात्रा में इतना हम कह सकते हैं कि आप जब वक्तव्य देते हैं तो हम लोगों को लगता है कि ज्ञान सागर की लहरों में हम लोग तैर रहे हैं, पार होना भी नहीं चाहते हैं, डूब भी नहीं सकते हैं। तो इसका जो सुख है हम लोग निरंतर प्राप्त कर रहे थे। ऐसे वक्तव्य के लिए आपको बार बार नमन, और यह याचना भी कि जब भी हम आपसे अनुरोध करें तो आप जरूर हम लोगों के बीच में पधारें और इसी तरह हम लोगों का ज्ञानवर्धन करते रहें। मुझे बहुत खुशी है कि आज के आपके उद्बोधन में जो समाज विज्ञान के मूल विषय हैं उनके ऊपर विधिवत प्रकाश पड़ा। इसके लिए आपका एक बार पुनः
बहुत सुंदर त्रिपाठी जी, बहुत बढ़िया त्रिपाठी जी, बहुत बहुत
धन्यवाद। धन्यवाद प्रोफेसर। अब अंत में संजय जी से निवेदन करूंगा, धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करें, उसके बाद कार्यक्रम की समाप्ति होगी। संजय जी सत्यार्थी प्रिंसिपल हैं गुजरात के किनारे दमन और दीव में, शायद मैं भूल जाता हूँ, दमन में एक कॉलेज के प्रिंसिपल हैं और अर्थशास्त्र के बड़े विद्वान हैं। आइए संजय जी, आपका स्वागत।
तेरे या तेरे नदीश गिरिवन को नमन करूं मैं, किसको नमन करूं मैं, भारत किसको नमन करूं मैं। दिनकर जी की इस कविता से जो दो पंक्तियां मैंने यहाँ पर उद्धृत की हैं वो देश के लिए है। वो बहुत सटीक लग रहा है कि आभार किसका दर्शन करूं, कृष्ण भट्ट जी का या शताध्वनि जी का। शताध्वनि जी ने जो चमत्कार दिखाया है पिछले 2 सत्रों में, उसके बारे में कुछ कहना शायद सूर्य को दीपक दिखाने जैसा है। और कृष्ण भट्ट जी के निमित्त बने हैं शताध्वनि जी को राधा कुमारी जी, पूर्वा भट्ट जी और सीमा बंसल जी के साथ जोड़ने में एक सेतु का काम किया है। जब दिल्ली से 2 प्रश्न आ रहे थे तो मुझे दिल्ली का जो वहाँ की जो बौद्धिक भूमि है, धरातल है, वहाँ पर किस प्रकार से चीजें हो रही हैं, और शताध्वनि जी जहाँ बेंगलोर में रहते हैं, तो यह संवाद शायद बहुत लंबे समय से छूता रह गया है और इस संवाद की बहुत आवश्यकता है। यानी ये संवाद सीधा जो इनमें विश्वविद्यालय चिंतन है, व्यवस्था है, और दूसरी तरफ जो हम जिसको कहते हैं अपनी वैदिक परंपरा, पौराणिक परंपरा या जो ज्ञान परंपरा, जिसके प्रतिनिधि के रूप में शताध्वनि जी आए हैं, इन दोनों परंपराओं का, दोनों चिंतन धाराओं का एक अच्छा संगम बन रहा है यहाँ पर। और इसलिए शताध्वनि जी के बारे में जैसा परिचय प्रारंभ में ही वाजपेयी जी ने बताया, 18 भाषाओं के जानकार हैं, 58 ग्रंथों की रचना की है, उद्भट विद्वान है, इसके बारे में अब कुछ कहने की बात ही नहीं है। और भारतीय शास्त्र के विद्यार्थी के रूप में उन्होंने अपना परिचय दिया, तो उनको मेरी ओर से और अपने संस्था की ओर से, राष्ट्रीय समाज विज्ञान परिषद की तरफ से खूब खूब आभार। आज का जो 2 विषय जिसका उल्लेखनीय है, जिसकी चर्चा मैं करना चाहूँगा संक्षेप में या बिल्कुल सूत्र में, वह था कि हमको उतने विस्तार में जो 2 सूत्र मिले हैं। एक कि कला जहाँ पर विकसित होती है वहाँ पर सुख शांति विचरती है, पसरती है। जो उन्होंने त्रैलोक्य विश्रांति जन्य कला का जो स्वभाव रखा है, उसका थोड़ा सा उन्होंने उल्लेख किया। और कई प्रश्न जो अपने मन में अलग अलग समय में आते हैं और जिन प्रश्नों का उत्तर हम लोग शायद नहीं दे पाते हैं, उन प्रश्नों का निराकरण हुआ है। और उन्होंने इस्तांबुल की राजधानी की जो बहुत संक्षेप में उल्लेख किया, वो इसका सीधा सीधा प्रमाण है कि जहाँ जहाँ पर कला कम हुई है, कला का की रचना कम हुई है, कला के साथ सरोकार कम हुआ है, वहाँ वहाँ पर हिंसा बढ़ी है और समाज में उपद्रव बढ़े हैं। एक और दूसरी बात, जो प्रश्न दिल्ली से आ रहे थे, दोनों जो अपनी प्राध्यापिकाएं हैं, उनको मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा। शताध्वनि जी ने बहुत संक्षेप में लेकिन एक बहुत सिस्टमेटिक तरीके से बता दिया कि किस प्रकार से नॉलेज ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग प्रोसेस यहाँ पर जो बिल्डअप हुआ है, कि ज्ञान विज्ञान ऋषियों का वैज्ञानिकों के बीच में, विश्वविद्यालयों में, सब जगह पर विकसित हो रहे हैं, चर्चा हो रही, शास्त्रार्थ हो रहे हैं, लेकिन किस तरह से सने सने वो पुराणों के माध्यम से नीचे तक पहुंचते हैं। और उसका बड़ा अच्छा उन्होंने कनेक्ट दिया है जो आधुनिक युग में जो लोग इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं विकिपीडिया को, कि विकिपीडिया में नित्य नई चीजें जुड़ती हैं, कुछ संशोधन होते हैं, कुछ चीजें रिमूव की जाती हैं। तो पुराणों का मुझे लगता है कि ऐसा विवेचन अभी तक हमने नहीं सुना था, और ये जो विवेचन है वो निश्चित रूप से ग्राह्य है और कई विद्यार्थियों को, समाजशास्त्र के विद्यार्थियों को भी और आज के आधुनिक रिसर्च करने वाले शोधकर्ताओं को भी इस बात के लिए प्रेरित करेगा कि वो फिर पुराणों में लौटें और वहाँ जो मेथोडोलॉजी दिख रही है उस मेथोडोलॉजी को अडॉप्ट करें। इसके लिए उनका खूब खूब धन्यवाद। बहुत लंबा कार्यक्रम हुआ है। मैं आज के जो अध्यक्ष हैं श्री श्रीमणि त्रिपाठी जी, उन्होंने बहुत संक्षेप में लेकिन पूरे लगभग 1-1.5 घंटे के सत्र का निचोड़ बताया, इसके लिए उनका आभार। संस्था के अध्यक्ष आदरणीय प्रोफेसर एडियन वाजपेयी जी और अपनी जो महामंत्री हैं शीला राय जी, उनका उन्होंने इस प्रकार के आयोजन किया है और उससे निश्चित रूप से हम सब लोग लाभान्वित होंगे। जिनके बारे में प्रोफेसर अमरजीत जी के बारे में जो बताया गया कि वो इस पूरे मतलब मैं महाभारत युद्ध तो नहीं है लेकिन इसके पूरे जिसको कहते हैं ना कि सब कुछ जो हो रहा है उसके सूत्रधार है। और आने वाले दिनों में जैसा यूट्यूब की तैयारी वो कर रहे हैं और उसके बाद जो रिकॉर्डिंग हो रही है, तो ये निश्चित रूप से जो कुछ वो कर रहे हैं वो विश्वविद्यालयों तक पहुंचना ही है। शायद ऐसे आज लगता है कि आज संख्या कम रही है या अगले सत्रों में भी संख्या कम रही होगी, लोगों की अनुकूलता नहीं है, लेकिन जो कार्य वो कर रहे हैं जिसकी धुरी बने हैं, जिस विष्णु अवतार पर समुद्र मंथन चल रहा है, संजीव सान्याल जी के पुस्तक का उदाहरण दिया शताब्दी जी ने, तो ये भी एक प्रकार का विचार मंथन चल रहा है। और इस विचार मंथन के रीढ़ जो बने हैं अपने अमरजीत जी, उनको भी खूब खूब धन्यवाद। आज कार्यकारी परिषद के जितने भी लोग उपस्थित रहे उनका धन्यवाद, उनका आभार। और जिन लोगों ने प्रश्न पूछे हैं और कल की तुलना में आज इसको ज्यादा लाइव बनाया है और इतना लंबा समय तक इस पूरे सत्र को ले गए हैं, इसलिए उनका भी धन्यवाद। एक बार पूरी टोली जो हम सब यहाँ बैठे हैं निश्चित रूप से एक महत्व उद्देश्य के साथ बैठे, एक महत्व कार्य को करने के लिए बैठे हैं और हम सबको अपने संकल्प में सिद्धि मिले, इस आशा के साथ आप सब लोगों का आभार कि मुझे आपने आज आभार दर्शन का मौका दिया। धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद संजय जी, आपके संबोधन से हम सब बहुत आह्लादित हुए और पूरे कार्यक्रम के 2 घंटे का 1-1 मिनट सजा हुआ लगा, इसके लिए सबका आभार। कार्यक्रम की समाप्ति की अनुमति लेता हूँ। सभी बड़ों को मेरा प्रणाम, छोटों को आशीर्वाद।
अमरजीत जी, अगला व्याख्यान 17 तारीख होगा, बता दीजिए प्लीज ना।
17 हर बृहस्पतिवार को चलेगा। अगला क्रम जो है आज के दिन की तरह बृहस्पतिवार को 8 बजे सीधे समय पे ही स्टार्ट होगा और उस हिसाब से फिर हम लोग मिलेंगे। और आज समय रहेगा सत्र का 8 से 10 के अंदर में ही। कृपया आप सब ज्वाइन करें और जो आज मिस कर गए हैं उनको बताएं कि आज 4 घंटे के बाद ये YouTube में हमारा RSVP का चैनल है, उस चैनल का नाम ही राष्ट्रीय समाज विज्ञान परिषद रखा है, आप वहाँ देखें और YouTube में भी आप देखेंगे और Facebook में भी देख पाएंगे। जी, सबको प्रणाम, नमस्कार।
नमस्कार नमस्कार
नमस्ते।
नमस्कार रमेश जी।
गणेश जी नमस्कार, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपको।
शीला मैडम जी नमस्कार।
रमेश जी नमस्कार।
नमस्ते, नमस्कार। सत्यार्थी सर नमस्कार।